today we just want to talk specifically about SSBCI, what the opportunity is, and it's $89 million over the next 10 years. So it's going to be a challenge, I'll tell you right off the bat, to deploy those funds. As much as there's a need, there's significant challenges. Much of it has to do with the federal Indian law, as was discussed this morning. So I'm really excited because I think that one of the questions that Tony asked was, what do we do now? This is an opportunity for us to really think about how can we structure our systems and our institutions so that we can support small businesses to take advantage of these type of programs. And that's part of what Mr. Austin was talking about when he said that we need our leaders to recognize what the challenges are and to develop our systems and our governments to respond to what the actualities of the federal Indian law and what that means for our communities. So how do we like to say hack the system. How do we come up with solutions around these larger problems in the system that aren't going to change? So hopefully we can get to those discussions and have a really good thought process here today or this morning. And so thank you for being here. I'm going to ask Doug, because we've been working with Doug Capitan with the Division of Economic Development, to describe a little bit about how SSBCI came about with the tribe, and then some of the sort of bigger parameters around what that money is about, and a little bit about the application that was submitted by the Navajo Nation.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, so I have a hard time sitting down sometimes. So again, my name is Douglas Capitan, and I'm Support Services Department Manager for the Division of Economic Development. And today I'm also joined with our economist, Miss Alicia Murphy. She's the economist of the Navajo Nation. So she works under our division as advising us in terms of program managers in deploying and strategizing different components of what we do, and analyzing a lot of information that we're planning to do. So she has a lot of plans ahead for data gathering and data collection, specifically with the Navajo Nation. So I just want to recognize her because I'll be referring to her on occasion during this presentation. So the Navajo State Small Business Credit Initiative came about back in 2021. The division received notice from the U.S. Department of Treasury that this opportunity was available. This program was then drafted as a notice of intent to the U.S. Treasury Department. We sent that out to the U.S. Treasury Department in around, I'd say, mid-summer of 2021. Mind you, this was during the closures. During that time, we began discussions in terms of planning and figuring out how we wanted to implement this program. And I knew from my background, coming from a very community-centric organization that I worked for back down at ASU, it was needing to be community-oriented because community members are experts in their communities. They know what they need, they know what they want, they know their goals, which is why we invited the Dene Chamber of Commerce and Change Labs to be included within those discussions and conversations. Since then, we've been able to work together to develop this program in unison with the assistance of our Department of Justice attorneys, because you always had to have attorneys when you're with the government to help you figure out what's legal and what's not legal. But the focus has been community-oriented in determining how to make the program function in a way that gets and deploys the money out in an efficient manner. The Navajo Nation received notice from the federal government in December of 2021 that we were to have an allotment of $89 million. The $89 million was to come out in 3 disbursements, at tranches as they describe it. The first one was $29 million, subsequently $29 million for the second tranche, $29 million for the third and last tranche. Each tranche is about 3 years long. So the awarding process for that is determined by how much we're able to put out there and how much we're able to commit to our Navajo businesses. Another component of planning this program has been the insistence that we put our Navajo businesses first, doing what's best for our Navajo businesses and understanding the realities that our Navajo businesses face. Part of the reasoning of this program was determined because of the challenges indigenous businesses have with allocating and receiving capital and financing opportunities. As you know, it's very difficult to receive capital and financing as a Native American business because of the issues related towards ownership of land, which most people will put up for collateral if you're living outside of Navajo or outside of any indigenous reservation boundary. You have the ability to mortgage your house. You have the ability to have enough collateral. You have sometimes generational wealth that you have access to where you can put up that collateral for a loan, for financing. Most individuals on the Navajo Nation or within any Native American community at that don't really have that access, don't have that ability to do so unless you live off the reservation and unless you come from a family of wealth. So there's all sorts of barriers that we're all very aware of, so I don't really need to describe them to anyone here. But it's I guess the overall question is, how do we overcome those barriers? How do we find solutions towards gaining access and providing access to our Navajo businesses? So within our program, that's important for us to have these key individuals in planning and development. Very recently, we began to work with our leaders in the legislative branch, which is why Delegate Slater has been very influential in providing us at least a lot of, well, not at least, but a lot of momentum forward with the dialogue with council. So it's going to take a village for us to get this money out, and we have incentive to get this money out. In order for us to receive the second tranche of funding, so we're all but certain that we are going to receive the first $29 million. When that's going to occur is largely up to when Treasury finally approves our application. We submitted our application back in October of 2022. We've set the application with Change Labs as our program administrator. I have a handout that I want to pass out. I'll pass it out probably after the presentation today. But the program is set up in a way where the government or whoever Treasury provides the funding to is the program implementer. The program implementer can then contract out to a program administrator who then works with a financial institution to distribute the funds. So right now we have pretty much everything in place. We're just waiting for some things to iron out with applications before it's set out. Once we do have the application approved and once Treasury says okay and once Navajo Nation says okay, we then have 90 days to have the program ready to be implemented and ready for our businesses to apply. So again, there's incentive for us to get the program money out. In order for us to receive the second tranche of funding, so in order for us to receive the second cycle of funding, just to make things easier, is we have to expend or commit at least 80% of the funding. So there's incentive for us to put it out there and to get it allocated for our businesses. Same goes for the third and final tranche of funding. We had to have at least 80% of it committed or expended by the time we want to get that final $29 million. The total sum is $89 million for the total Navajo Nation. Within that time, it's up to us to develop programs that are going to be beneficial for our businesses, beneficial for our program administrators, beneficial for our communities. I know that there's a lot of dialogue with regards to the challenges that the Navajo Nation faces in regards to getting funding out to people. We've experienced that with the hardship in terms of the money coming through the controller's office and then funneling through various means and sectors and then finally getting to where it needs to be. I think that within our time in terms of this development, it's going to be important for us to utilize as much brain power as possible to strategize how we can best effectively get that funding out to where it needs to go. but keeping it in a way where we follow the parameters of Navajo law and Navajo procurement processes. I'm proud to say that we do have one of our contracting entities who has helped us with the grant program here, Building Nations. That I think we utilize that as a really good example in terms of optimizing our Navajo resources internally and keeping that funding within. As you know, during the 2020 grant program, the funds were funneled through Baker Tilly, and not a non-Navajo entity who was contracted out of Pennsylvania for the grant program itself and the hardship program. And we understood how difficult that was for the funding to get out and dispersed to our Navajo people. It's going to be important that we continue to maintain that momentum that we currently have now with our Navajo businesses and Navajo contracting businesses, and have them help us with the same understanding of knowing how our communities work, how our communities operate, even how we spell our names differently, because you know begays come in different spellings. There's a B-E-G-A-Y-E, and then there's one without an E. Even something as simple as that is really important for cultural understanding of how to be effective in your community planning, how to be effective within your program administration, and how to be effective as a governing body, because we all know how we work together. So that's sort of just a very broad description of the program. For eligibility requirements, in order for us to get this program out, we must have private funding to match, that's going to be included within the public funding that needs to match one another. So we have allotted $7 million to Change Labs, and will utilize SSBCI funding towards their component of their loan participation and loan guarantee programming, which means that of that $29 million for the first tranche, we have $22 million that we're developing in terms of a venture capital fund, larger capacity loan guarantee funding programs, as well as larger loan participation programs. There are a lot of opportunities, and there's a lot of technicalities that we're trying to figure out with the program itself, but we're confident in the fact that we're going to have and put our best foot forward and scale up with the program, so that way we can include larger capacity financial opportunities for our Navajo businesses. So that's a very rough presentation of the general overview of the SSBCI program, but it's still in progress with a good portion of it up for dialogue and up for interpretation with our community partners who have helped us get this far with the programming. So I'll go ahead and give it back to Jessica.
Thank you, Doug. So let me just kind of summarize a little bit. You heard that Change Labs has $7 million of the first tranche. So the first tranche is around $29 million. So there's about $22 million there that is still hasn't been allocated in terms of what type of funding or what type of resources, what kind of financial products are going to be available, and who's going to be offering that. But I can tell you a little bit about Change Labs. Our programs are going to be a loan guarantee program, which the amount of funding is still pretty small. It's $5,000 to $50,000 in loan dollar amounts. We do have a couple of partnerships that we've set up who will be doing some larger size loans through our loan participation program. So if you'd like some information on that, you can find myself. You can also talk to Christine Laughter, who's the director of our kinship loan program, and as well as Swarovski Little, who's our loan officer. So that's kind of just a simple summary of what Doug said. I just wanted to add a little bit to what Doug was saying about the SSBCI program and thinking about the $22 million that hasn't been allocated. So there's loans in general as a program, and loans of all different types. There's loan guarantee programs, there's loan participation programs. We also can, help with when an entrepreneur can raise 50% of the loan amount on their own, then SSBCI funds can come in and allow you to borrow the other half of that. So there's a lot of different creative ways that you can structure loan programs. There's also a venture capital program or an equity-based financing program that Change Labs is looking into. We just got back from a training last week with a fund manager out of the University of Utah called Sorensen Impact Center, and thinking through what kind of structure might we be able to take advantage of for the businesses that we work with on the reservation or even off the reservation who are Navajo owned, and how can we take an equity stake or part ownership of a company and provide them with the cash they need to grow that company. And what does that look like? What are the requirements that make that type of financial program work, especially for our companies, for businesses that we work with every day, businesses that we know are struggling to grow, businesses that people come to us with their ideas. We do coaching every Monday, where we open we do online coaching, so you can sign up for a coaching session with a coach and talk to them about your idea, or if you have a business and you need just some help, you have some questions, you can access a coach. Well, we do hear a lot of ideas from people who think they have a solution for something that their community is experiencing, or just Native people generally. And so there's ideas out there. It's just a matter of how do we get those ideas funded. And that's where venture capital comes in, because you aren't able to generally get a loan for startup businesses. So if you're going to start a new business, you have to find some other sort of financing or finance it yourself. So just to kind of add to the discussion and a little bit more detail about where we are now, and just give you a little bit more to think about as I pass the mic over to our Honorable Council Delegate Carl Slater, who will kind of give an overview of where the tribe is, what the tribe is thinking in this, and how they'll be working with DED, and how this might work with an investment strategy from the tribe's perspective, and what it means, what it would mean for the tribe to possibly take equity stake, but also how do we attract lenders to the reservation to participate in this program.
Again, good morning, everyone. It looks like we have more people in here. My name's Carl Slater, and I introduced myself earlier, but for those who came in later, Adonai Nashonagi Keani She Sontone Bashashin Tsinajani Dashache Do Sontone Dashanella. I say star people for the Jewish people. So, who here has successfully obtained a loan? 1, 2, 3. Is there anyone else? 4 or 5. Now, was it a personal loan for yourself, or was it for a business? Was all business? Okay. Who here took out loans to go to college? Quite a few more people. Okay. Funny how the federal government set that up. Okay. What is the lubricant in the economy? Credit, right? You're trying to grow a business, need to buy inventory, need to buy an office space, need to rent it, and you don't have money to start off with, but you got a good idea. And let me tell you why I asked that, right? I think that shows you that either we have a lot of bootstrap businesses here, or we have a lot of businesses that say are suppressed in their potential revenues and their potential, really, overall. And we have some that, for whatever reason, they were able to access credit. What are some of the primary drivers of people being able to access credit? That's a good one, yeah? What was that? Collateral? So, in that other room over there, what were we talking about? Basically, none of us, well, I don't know, I'm from Chinle Agency, I'm from Round Rock, there's no allotment land in my district or in my family. We can't collateralize off of our trust lands, right? And if you have a business on Navajo, generally the Division of Economic Development owns that building, right? So you can't put that up when you're going after a loan. Maybe you have a successful business and you're trying to grow it. And you can look at your cash flows, and maybe a bank will look at you and say, okay, well, you seem safe, we'll give you this amount. Without those other pieces, though, generally they're not going to take you too seriously. Or your interest rate is going to be very high because you're much riskier. Now, who here is from, say, one of the major cities on Navajo? A Tuba City, a Chinle, Fort Defiance, Window Rock, Crown Point, Shiprock? Raise your hand. Kayenta, too. I'll throw that in there. Okay. And your businesses are located there? No? Who here is from a community like Round Rock? Yeah? Are your businesses located there? Yeah? Okay. So what's your market for a lot of your businesses? Is it your local community, or are you trying to do something bigger than that? Tourism. Well, I know you're from Lucie, so it's a slightly different picture there. Yeah, that's good. And with the mask on in the back, do you mind sharing what your business is or what you're interested in doing?
Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas. I'm from Wheatfield, Arizona, and we have here construction. So we do mostly road construction work on Navajo Nation, road development, project development, stuff like that.
Okay. So that's not exclusive to Wheatfields, but he had the benefit of getting we just had an NDOT road project over there. And I think you participate with NECA, right, as a sub? Okay, excellent. So I'm asking these questions to try and get a picture in the room of what I should talk about. There's a lot of different ways to approach this, but you have the State Small Business Credit Initiative, $89 million coming down to the Navajo Nation. It's going to impact the rest of Indian country too. How do we get those dollars deployed into loans or other maybe credit products or equity investments into our small businesses? How many people in this room have participated from pre-seed stage to a Series A in a venture capital round? How many people know what that is? Raise your hand. There are 4 people, I think. 4 people who know a little bit about venture capital. So you see, these are some of the obstacles that we're just confronting as a nation in figuring out how to get the money out the door. Ordinarily, if you're the state of Arizona, you're going to have a line, maybe not out the emergency exit, out that door of businesses that are saying, I am going to offer you this deal. I want to hear your counteroffer, say for 10% of my company. You're a couple of ASU kids, you're starting a tech startup down in Tempe, and they have a venture capital arm of the state. They're going to lay out the terms. They're going to hire a bank to help them identify how to raise money, at what rates, how many shares there's going to be, right? Because even in private companies, you can have shares, and some of you probably have that organized, not just as partners or partnerships, not just as LLCs, but within that, you'll have stock prices, stock units. You can have preferred class shares, Class A, Class B. Some of them have voting rights. So as a nation, we have not created a venture capital ecosystem. And a part of that is, you look at our market. The businesses that we're engaging in are not the traditional venture capital type of firms and businesses. What are those types of firms? Where is venture money? If you look at that over the course of the 20th century, you could say a lot of venture money at the beginning of the century was in minerals and resource exploitation, putting money into miners out in Colorado and California, oil development on the East Coast, and then coming out west. And you had a lot of these firms, right? You're going to invest. I'm a venture capitalist. I have a fund. I take money from different investors. And this is a risky asset class, venture. It's not like a bond where there's a fixed return. or a loan where there's a fixed term and hopefully they pay it back. Now, you have, let's say, the Navajo Nation creates a venture capital firm and we're the sole investor in it. Then we have to go out there and identify companies that we want to invest in. You know, when you look at how venture capital takes place in Silicon Valley, it's very speculative with all the rigor that they do in the world, identifying these balance sheets, product market fit, looking at all these different things that they want to achieve in this return and this risk return profile. All of that, you still have maybe 10 to 20% of your companies that are going to be the ones that make like 80% of the returns or something like that in your fund. A lot of them are going to fail. A lot of them are just going to plod along and kind of, move up. Starting a business, as you know, is very hard. Most businesses fail. So inherently, we're talking about a very risky endeavor on behalf of the government. Now, I, as a Navajo Nation official, I have a fiduciary responsibility to you as Navajo citizens and to the Navajo Nation. Now, we have the opportunity to enter into a riskier asset class and invest that money. We also have the opportunity to do more traditional lending. Now, what are some of the issues in access to credit? We talked about collateralization, securitization. Those are things that are big, huge barriers. There's not a lot of friends and family money when you're starting off your business because, if we had started a lot of businesses back when the wool buying program was full bore, we'd probably be in a different situation. There'd be a lot more generational wealth when you look at the wealth that existed on Navajo at that time because of a government subsidy. So you have your loan products, your interest rates, right? Usually something above LIBOR. Then beyond that, you're looking at the risk to the type of business from the perspective of your Wells Fargo, your First Southwest, Four Corners Community Bank, some of these credit unions. This program has a requirement of a one-to-one match. The whole point of it is to encourage private investment, not just government subsidies, into historically underserved communities. Obviously, Navajo Nation underserved. Entrepreneurs, say, in certain areas of Arizona or from certain demographics in Arizona, New Mexico, across the country. Now, what does that one-to-one match mean? Say the nation's going to issue a loan, and let's leave Change Labs out of it for a second. But say we're just going to do everything in-house. The loan's going to be $50,000. We can put up $25,000. A private party, someone else, non-government revenues, have to provide the other $25,000. Where do we get that? Why are we challenged at accessing credit and loans? There are underwriting standards that exist within these banks, right? They say you don't fit this matrix, you don't qualify on the 5 C's of credit. All these different things that prohibit access. But it's to mitigate risk on behalf of that corporation, on behalf of that banking institution. They're not in the business of giving out free money. Because why? Most businesses fail. So there's a risk. They have shareholders. Those shareholders could be you and me. You participate in the Navajo Nation's 401k program. You say you have an index of the S&P 500. You don't want Wells Fargo just giving out free money, because then we're going to be back in 2008. Great financial crisis. So how do we overcome those barriers? Now, Change Labs has done something unique in that they work with a credit union that has received private foundation funding. And so that loosens or it loosens the underwriting requirements for some of these loans. And they're not going out and getting $1 million loan or credit facility. But this is it to $50,000? So $5,000 to $50,000. That could be a huge impact to some of your businesses, right? To allow you to grow, maybe bring on new staff, increase your inventory, have more real-time, on-demand responsiveness to your clients. But fundamentally, as a nation, This first $29 million, we now have to find $22 million, because they have their match. They have $7 million in outside funding with their credit union, and I think it was a donation from Wells Fargo to that credit union. We have to find another $22 million. So in aggregate, in this first tranche, we have to deploy $44 million. Now, there are some limits when you go in and you read the regulations on the venture capital side. It might cap the amount that we can invest in individual companies. So I, as a legislator, right? I, as a leader, I want to make sure that we spend or obligate every single dollar of that 89. But at the very least, we got to get past this first hurdle. So 80% of 29 is what? 23. Good job. $23 million. We have $7 million taken care of. So how much is left? You guys are in business. Come on. You got to be good with numbers. 16, right? 16 million. Now we have to find another 16 million in outside capital. So that's 32. We brought it down from 44. Let's just look at the near-term problem. We have to figure out how to deploy $32 million in loans at the lowest leverage possible, which is 1-to-1. Now, we could participate and say that 32 is going to be levered up 5 times. I think you're allowed to lever up to 10 in this program, right? So levering up to 10, what's that? $320 million. Now, these are some of the obstacles that we're encountering, even with 89 million, even with 29 million. You think, okay, we got the money, let's get it out there. But we're going to have a co-participant in that loan or in that venture fund because of that 1-to-1 match, right? If that institution is putting up depositor money, they're a traditional bank or whatever, or they're not using, say, foundation, or if they're using the business's money, they're going to have those underwriting standards. So we're still almost back at square one in getting the money out, because these banks have money to lend anyways. So those are some of the issues that we're trying to confront and overcome. And there's a lot of different ways that we have contemplated, I think, as a nation through DED and myself, and then also working with Change Labs and Jessica, is that how is the nation going to do this? We've never had access to this amount of money to be able to push into our small businesses. If you know, in the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Relief Fund, the Navajo Nation, is it okay if I keep going, or is this boring? Because there's a lot here, and I want you to kind of hear from my but somewhat the government's perspective. Although I'll say I don't really have any other, I don't know any other delegates who are focusing on this right now, but they're maybe keeping their finger on the pulse. Coronavirus relief funds, we authorize a small business and artisan relief grant program, right? 5 up to 60,000. There are different levels depending on the size of your business and what you could access. That program was continued under ARPA. It was reauthorized in a bill that I sponsored in July of 21. We've been pushing money out the door to help people. Those are grants. Those are not loans. As a part of that process, in theory, we were supposed to collect data on the types of businesses that might need credit assistance, get just more data on what our economy looks like, what our businesses look like, so that in the future, either through a program like this or other future programs. I mean, there was the payroll protection program, right? A lot of our people didn't participate in that because their books weren't regularized to kind of general accounting standards. So in this process of going after and trying to figure out how we can deploy credit, it's really this nexus point into all of the different issues that we confront as a people. So we go and listen to that conversation there, right? And I don't mean to knock some of the people who were talking in there, but you just said the same thing that everybody's been saying for the last 100 years. We all know the problems, right? How do we overcome them? And just saying, oh, the government should do this. You're a business owner, right? Aren't you? I shouldn't say this. You're not Reaganites, but you're like, you don't want the government in there stepping on your neck. So we need housing, we need zoning, these sorts of things. And in order to, I'd say, force us as a people, as a nation, as a society, to transform into something where credit is an option, where we're actually able to have more of an understanding of our real estate market, where we're able to have better market intelligence, market information, really build that economy. I hope that we take this opportunity as a government and as locals to get serious. We've had opportunities to do zoning for decades now through our community land use planning commissions or committees. Those are under the chapter. And I'll tell you what, you go off the reservation, you look at who does zoning in a lot of these different border town communities, or even in the larger cities in the United States. At that local level, I'll give you an example. I grew up between Round Rock and Washington, D.C. There's something called these ANCs, Advisory Neighborhood Commissions or something like that. They have a lot of say in how zoning takes place within their communities. Those people work basically for free. We have to reinvigorate that ethic about participating at the local level to identify land uses. Now, I tried to build a trail in Round Rock over the past couple of years. And the area that I was going to use was kind of this rocky outcrop coming off the road. We were going to clean up an illegal dump site that was there and turn it into parking structures in the trailhead. And I ended up meeting with the permittees, and they said no. Now, there's no forage in the area. It's also very close. It's not a super remote area. The idea is it's for our community, and then for the region, and then for the nation, and then down the line, we're going to invite outsiders in, and let's try and build this tourism, this economy in that way. Let's focus on our needs first, though, not just sell our land to someone else. They said no. Now, I have a community in Rough Rock. They want a store. It's a Chija. They had a trading post at the junction there. Someone said maybe they're from Chilchimbato. You probably drive into Chinle every once in a while. You go right past the junction that takes you into the community there. That land, permittees said no. And so we have a resolution now for 2 different administrations saying we want the president to exercise eminent domain so that we can set up a business site there and have NHA come build more housing because we have an immense housing need in our community. We want our kids to come home. We have all these elders who are living farther out. It's cumbersome for them to live out there. Their homes are deteriorating. At that level, we need to get serious. We always talk about the Hogan level. But we also always run back to Window and say, fix this for me. We have the power at the local community to exercise that sovereignty, to decide what our communities look like. So that's my plug for CLUP-Cs. On the other side of that is, how as a nation are we going to deploy this money? We can't use public dollars. So we can't just have the permanent trust fund come in and bail it out. Now that was my hope, crossing my fingers for the past year. We had a call, we're still going to present it to Treasury. But for that one-to-one match, it cannot be, say, permanent trust fund income. For a while, I've spoken about trying to create almost our own venture fund within the permanent trust fund and have a sub-policy where we're able to make investments into Navajo businesses. I'd like to see us still do that. So that way we're not bound by this one-to-one match, some of the underwriting standards that exist. We could potentially hold on to these investments over longer periods of time because we're the shareholder. And we're willing to accept either a little bit higher risk. Our master trust is, I think, $3.7 billion. Then we have a trust that's for our pension program, and that's about $1 billion. So with the pensioners, maybe we don't want to be as risky. Now with the master trust, you could assign 0.02% and try to start making some of these investments into our businesses here on Navajo. But you're going to need land for your business site lease. Now, I'd say the last thing, what is the most important thing in economics? That you can basically distill everything else down to. Just shout out ideas here. Come on, you're a room of business people. I want to hear something. Important, maybe for a business or a firm. Supply and demand, right? You can think about basically everything. Your tours, right? How many dollars are there going into road construction on Navajo? How many competitors do you have in both of those spaces? Let's go back to that C-store example. We were talking about Multi-use development, I heard some other things in there in the other room, talking about shopping centers, all of this, right? If it's such a good idea to invest in Chinle and Kayenta, why aren't more people doing it? We have to be frank about the market that exists on Navajo and the types of businesses we can invest in and that are going to be good. In order to get us to that next step, yes, we need infrastructure, but we need housing. In the adjudication of our water rights, they're saying you don't have enough houses, you're not building enough, so why should we give you more water? So I'm trying to work on a plan right now where we could potentially leverage our citizen fund to get $500 million, $1 billion, invest that into housing for middle income and say higher income earners. Try to lubricate that system so it's not every person on their own going out there trying to find a builder. In that CARES Act process, in Black Rock, down the road from Wheatfields, we had NECA go through several Navajo Nation small businesses who failed to deliver on bathroom additions. Something as simple as a bathroom addition. We need to be candid, too, about the types of businesses. I'm not here to indict the entire Navajo Nation business community, but we can paint this rosy picture, and we need to come back and say, wait, as a fiduciary, as a legislator, I have to come back and say, these are the types of businesses, or these are the mechanisms that we need to put in place. On the other side, we have an obligation to come up with housing. On the other side, we need our local businesses to put pressure on our local communities to say we need zoning. Because when I walk into a chapter in CLUPC, they're never talking about zoning. I'm the only one who might bring it in, except for one of them. They're doing a good job. All of those are going to help us solve that credit picture. And then I'm going to go to DC and I'm going to lobby for restricted fee land. I think that needs to be our #1 legislative priority in DC. Why? Because federal NEPA regulations don't apply on that restricted fee land. You could own it. It could be in your business's name. The bank will lend it to you because it will collateralize off your 2-acre plot right there. All of a sudden, we're getting that 50% one-to-one match on some of these loans. So I know I went way beyond SSBCI, but credit, I think, is the window into addressing our economy. And we need to be holistic. And so as a legislator, I'm trying to think, at the end of 7 years, when we're done reporting on this money, say all we do is change labs, but that money either stays with them or comes back to the nation. At the end of 7 years, that becomes the nation's money unrestricted. There's no more reporting requirements. So let's hope that at the end of 7 years, we have $89 million plus interest on whatever we've done. So let's say we have $100 million now. How are we going to make those investments for that next stage? Is it going to be into housing? Are we going to have a different economy then? The U.S. economy was what, like 60-40 services and goods and manufacturing on that side? During COVID, that switched. There's still some big restructuring. There's a lot of onshoring. There's a lot of different trends that are taking place. I think there's an opportunity with SSBCI to try and recruit some businesses to Navajo to employ our people. And let's be frank, that could be competition for existing business owners on Navajo. So we have to figure out how to work in parallel and in tandem. And those are the things that over the next few months we're still going to be working very intently on. And we don't have a perfect picture right now. We have some partners that are competent and capable and we're able to work with. There are, I'd say, Mayday, doomsday scenarios that we need to start contemplating. Because there's only so many 5,000, there's only so many $50,000 loans you can make. And $89 million is a lot of money. But let's just get over this initial $16 million hurdle so that we can get that next tranche. And I invite you to give me your comments, to give me your ideas, and I hope I didn't take away all the question time. But thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Slater. Okay, so we do have time for questions, and we'll get right to it. Anybody have questions? Also, just want to let you all know that this is the handout that Doug mentioned that's got information about the Navajo Nation's program. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question for Delegate Slater. say it's going to last like 20 years, 30 years, 40 years down the road, with the quality of the structure going up, be a lot better. Will it have more quality?
Well, I don't want to speculate too much. I think that, as I understand it, that deal was really well put together, and I don't think it would have necessarily improved the quality of the building because you're building to La Quinta standards, right? So they have to have some sort of agreement in place to figure all that out, and they're not just going to let you put up, you know, a shack and sell rooms out of it. But on the other side of that is, okay, it's a riskier investment. You have a certain amount that was allocated from the tribe and I think from the community governance, right? But what if you were able to collateralize off the land? Because all these real estate deals, right? There's usually the company, like Marriott or someone, there's a REIT, a real estate investment trust, they own the land that the hotel is on. Then there's the company that might own the actual hotel itself. Then there's the company that's the operator of that hotel. And then you have a license with the other company, you know, your La Quintas, your Marriotts. All these things get really complicated when you aren't able to access the land and secure that in some way. It's all about mitigating risk in your businesses, right? And so that's why all these different transactions are divvied up and they're spread out. Commercial real estate, commercial mortgage-backed securities. You know, those are things we need to look at doing.
The reason why I said that is they'll be capable of reselling it at a higher price.
Good afternoon. My name is Geraldine Laughter. I'm the Economic Development Specialist with Kayenta Township. Thank you for that question to my brother. One of the things I was thinking about that too, he talks about the quality of what we put into our communities too. Kayenta Township does have zoning, a comprehensive zoning plan that was put in about 10 years ago. It's not perfect, but you know, it helps guide our community and how we want and where we want to put our businesses. The other thing that our community does too, or have put in place, is regulations concerning building. And we follow building regulatory standards that are pretty general across the United States. So when you talk about buildings, you know, those are important to put into your community so you get good structure. You get very good structure. We at one time had a building inspector with the Kayenta Township, and I heard great things when buildings went up in our community, that they were being built sound and that they were gonna last a long time. And you know, if you don't have that in your communities, those type of things, you know, it does make it harder for collateralization to occur too. And I have seen some businesses in our community do collateralization with their businesses and with their land leases. So it is possible, but we need to educate a lot of those banks out there to understand how to collateralize business site leases as well. So that way you're able to get loans for your businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. I'm going to go back here and I'll come back up.
Thank you, Jessica. Yes, good afternoon. Excellent discussion. Thank you, Doug, for giving us an overview of that. And Mr. Carl Slater. And my name is Raymond Nopa. I'm the general manager with Navajo Nation Shopping Centers. Last week, we opened up a Navajo woman-owned pizza place in Crown Point. I mean, that's a big venture that we undertook. And what we're doing also as well, too, is we're changing out. As you know, Navajo Nation government doesn't build public buildings for its offices, so they occupy our shopping centers. But the bad thing about that is that the traffic is only 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. But whereas if you have a business, then you have 8 to 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, Saturday and Sunday. So we took the initiative to change out that particular effort. And so as a result, Victoria's Pizza in Crown Point, another one going up, there's something else going up in Shiprock, Tuba City, and then also here in Dilcon as well too. So we're starting to gain some momentum to really attract Navajo businesses back into our spaces. And so I just wanted to offer to Doug, and I took the information that you brought up in Shanant, as that you're soliciting for some comments. I would like to offer shopping centers, because I think the push that we're making towards having to attract Navajo businesses and really getting the Navajo businesses into our space. Because take for instance, Victoria's Pizza. Last year we signed a lease in August, and she got up here within about maybe almost within 7 months. And so Division of Economic Development, even brand new lease happens, it takes longer than that. So we have all access to the land. And so I just want to basically say that we're there, and we really are interested in participating in either formulating or providing some additional comments to the program. As I took it that you're soliciting comments, and so we appreciate that opportunity. And I just want to present that information to the speakers as well too. In addition to that, I just want to also add too that with the Newcomb project, it's an oasis in the desert, and we're thinking about doing a grocery store there. And this would be an excellent opportunity to get to really get to this fund, because we're really looking, and I think we're done with Bashas, we're done with Lowe's. We want someone Zuni's doing it. Zuni has a grocery store that's tribally owned. We want to do the same with a Navajo-owned grocery store operator. And so as you can see, we're really making that push, but we're really interested to learning more about the program and working with economic development, and of course our legislatures as well too. I just wanted to provide that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Okay, I'm going to come back up here, and we have probably time for one more question.
My name's Terry Hudson. I'm a private business owner. I just started about 2 years ago. I haven't really tried to get interest or a business loan yet, but my biggest pullback is interest rates right now. And I'm wondering if, with your program, will the interest rates that you offer be subject to market rates? And in addition to that, in your match program, would that other half match be subject to market rates?
Yate, thank you, Mr. Nopa. I sit in your old office, so your presence is around me all the time. So is your paperwork. You need to pick that up pretty soon. With like I said in my portion of the lecture conversation, we've been community-based, and part of my understanding is that a lot of our enterprises do things way better than the Navajo Nation can. That's why the Navajo Nation doesn't do the Navajo Times. Otherwise, the Navajo Times would be 2 months behind their actual news. So we rely on our enterprises to be experts in their field, and part of the development of this program is to utilize strengths-based leadership. So Change Labs obviously does a whole lot better at certain things than the Navajo Nation does. So that's kind of been the example of how we've formulated this programming. And I know I wanted to incorporate some of the enterprises into the industries in which they are incorporated within. The easiest example for me, and this has no relation because J.T. Willie was my former boss, but NACE is a good example of extending a program for our artists in particular, because they have that particular expertise in relating to their providing those resources to our artists. And I know that if we were to go about that route to provide and assist our enterprises to provide their constituents or their industries with those specific resources, either in growing and development of adding additional building spaces or opportunities for them to expand their businesses, all the better. So I'm looking forward to having those conversations. We're kind of almost getting there. So I will be in contact with you with regard to planning with Navajo shopping centers, just as with our other enterprises like NACE, NAPI, who has the expertise within agriculture, NECA with construction businesses, and so on and so forth. Now that's going to be in time, and it'll just develop in momentum. So I'm looking forward to those conversations. With regard to the market rates, it's going to be subject to those market rates, unfortunately, just because the Treasury Department is the end-all be-all with regards to a lot of the financing and investment opportunities and setting that precedent. So it's going to be subject, which will require us to be very smart with regards to our investment opportunities that we set. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. I think that the way the U.S. Treasury Department has set up this programming is to be very sensitive and mindful of those businesses that are intended to use this programming. Part of the initiative with Treasury in developing this program was to provide access to those business owners that typically don't have access, and that includes those individuals that may not have perfect credit, and those individuals that may find it difficult because of whatever reason, the financial institution. We have this component of the program as a leveraging opportunity to bring more financial institutions in with us to partner, and that enables us to set some precedent with regard to the policies and certain things that are in place. So I know that we have the ear of Treasury, so in those conversations, that sort of information, that sort of feedback is really important for us to hear, because we can bring that to the table of Treasury when we're at the table with Treasury to make sure that they know that that's an issue for us on our Native American and Indigenous communities. So any feedback like that is important for us. So I thank you for sharing that, and that we'll bring that into the discussion when we have our next meeting with Treasury.
Okay, it's just about lunchtime, so I hope everybody's hungry. I guess I'll just sort of close us out here with, I think something that kind of sums it all up with that question about the interest rates. And that interest rates are rising. They were pretty low for a really long time, and they're rising now. And so the problem is that then capital becomes too, or the ability to borrow becomes too expensive for small businesses. And so their payments are too high, their cash flow isn't gonna cover that. And one of the programs under SSBCI is that the state or the tribe can buy down that interest rate working with a traditional lender. So if you have a lender that's interested, but you can't get the deal down to where your cash flow will actually make the payment, then that's where an SSBCI program would step in and say, we'll buy out that piece to make the interest rate lower for this borrower. But that works in like the states where traditional lenders are out there looking for deals. The problem that we have on the nation is that we don't have traditional lenders that are even interested. We're not even that close where we can implement a program like that. So just being real, that's kind of the challenge that we have, and that's where we need to figure out how do we implement policies. This has to be a bigger shift of how we all do business, how we all work together and work within our communities to change and make small business easier to do, more effective, and also that the policies at the upper level within the tribe can change in response to what the needs of the small businesses and the communities are. So I think that's the message that we're trying to portray here and have this discussion and start this discussion. Hopefully, we barely scratched the surface here, so many more discussions that need to be had, and we encourage you all to go back and think about this, talk to other people, talk to business owners about what they think and how, and so that we can come up with these creative solutions. So yeah, thank you very much. I want to thank my panelists for sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom with us today, and thank you all for attending our session. Yeah.